I have the Commanders at the 5 spot, so I love where you're putting them. And like, we got to talk about it too.
Keep going.
Yeah, right. We're neck and neck. I mean, great minds think alike. And that Hail Mary play too. Like, there are well-coached teams and there are poorly coached teams. And you just got to look at Tariq Stevenson, that defensive back for the Bears, was like taunting Commanders fans. Bro,
that was crazy.
It's a Hail Mary. Like, Jayden Daniels is one of the best deep ball passers in the NFL. Blank. Period. Not for a rookie.
Which was a surprise to me, actually. I hadn't seen his arm strength like that, and I was blown away by. He threw that ball 70 yards on a rope, which was crazy.
Moving around too, like 12, 13 seconds, running around from this pass rush, and just flicks a wrist. If you're like, he's taunting the fans. Ball is snapped, turns around, is like, oh then runs over, and it looks like it hit his right hand, and it deflected right back to Brown. Like, dude, that's bad. Now,
he's
like,
got to be kicking himself.
DJ Moore, one of the leaders of the Bears, was commenting like, hey, it's coachable, it's teachable. He's part of the team. Like, they said all the right things. He owned up to it, went on social media to post like, that's not me, that was dumb. But man, bro, like, you got to play every down. The Commanders did that, and credit to them. I have them in the 5 spot. Look, they're 6-2. And I want to point out that their defense ranks 23rd in the NFL in yards per play allowed, 29th in yards per rush allowed, 19th in yards per completion allowed, and 21st in completion percentage allowed to opposing quarterbacks. And those are all key stats for defense of basically how much you give up per snap and how well do you let opposing teams pass on you. And they're 6-2 because Jayden Daniels and what this offense does and how explosive and dynamic he is, where he's brilliant in the pocket of knowing when to tuck and run, his feel for pressure, knowing when to scramble. He's not over-reliant on it, Jahmai, which I love about him. Like, he's a very good quarterback. He's a very good passer, and he's one of the fastest guys on the football field. Just makes him so dangerous. They're 3rd in yards, 2nd in yards per rush, 4th in yards per attempt passing, which is really good. That's a good measurement of how explosive your passing attack is. 2nd in completion percentage. They're efficient. They're explosive. They're winning football, and Jayden Daniels is doing so much for this team. The Commanders are blowing me away with these expectations. I thought they'd finish last. I thought the Giants would be just ahead of them because this roster isn't that great. The defense isn't that great. But man, you get a quarterback rolling and you get a lot of pieces right around him, like where they invested in the offensive line and even just with Terry McLaurin, but they're running the ball with Brian Robinson. Like, they're doing so many things right. I love the Commanders right now. I have them in my 5 spot.
Yeah, one of the surprises of the season so far for sure. And I had him in my 6th spot. So, I mean, they're right there, as you mentioned. But shout out to my guy, Moises Linares, also, who he's a Spanish language football announcer for the Commanders. And he had an excellent call that's going viral. It was incredible. So I got to find that if you get a moment. Yeah, for sure. But my 5 team is within, striking distance of the one that you had them at. And that's the Baltimore Ravens. Despite the tough loss, obviously, at Cleveland, but you look at their 8 games so far. 5 of their 8 games have been played against divisional opponents, and they're 2-3, so a game below 500. And that's where the deficiencies lie. You're beating up on each other. The divisional opponents have the most intel on you and know your tendencies. So those games are much more difficult to win and usually a lot more close. So I look at the Cleveland Browns, and it's the Cleveland Browns, a poverty franchise. You see what they've done over the last several years, but also they're in the division. So some of those times those things happen. I mean, depending on which way you look at it, you could even say the same thing about the New York Jets losing to the Patriots in their place. So I feel like Baltimore is still there, and they got so much explosive plays. You mentioned Deontay Johnson, who was traded for the 2nd time this season, which is crazy. So hopefully this will kind of help him be reinvigorated again, because he was on a Panthers squad that was awful, that remains awful, and he had 30 receptions, 357 yards, and he had 3 touchdowns for a team who could not find the end zone if they were given a compass. So I like the Baltimore Ravens at my number 5 spot.
Hey, all 3 of their losses were by 1 score, too. 27-20 to the Chiefs, 26-23 to the Raiders, which was a huge letdown on their part. Then 29-24 to the Browns on a touchdown allowed with just under a minute left. Like, that is a crazy swing of the pendulum for them. They easily could be a 1 or 2 loss team. That's it. They easily could be undefeated right now, especially catching those Chiefs week 1. It's a really good spot to be in, and then they made a huge upgrade on the offense. An offense that's been rolling, like one of the best offenses that got better. My 4th spot, I went with the Buffalo Bills. And, like, dude, you win in Seattle, stop. Full stop. You have my attention. On top of that, like, running all over a Seattle defense that is banged up, but Mike McDonald, their new head coach, prides it on defense. And this is a great defense to begin the season. They've dealt with their injuries. And then on the opposite end, how good their run defense has been. They held Kenneth Walker to when he's healthy. He's one of the best athletes in the NFL. He's one of the best running backs in the NFL. Career low, 1.3 yards per rush. They did that to Kenneth Walker. You take out the motor of that offense. And again, you go out west to the 12th man, one of the hardest places to play, and you upset the Seahawks like that. You have my attention. I think I had the Bills outside of my top 10 last week. They're now in my 4th spot. That's how big of a win that was. And they're 6-2, finding ways to win. And the defense is slowly getting better and better.
All right, that's a great pick. I certainly like it, but I got some West Coast bias and me always talking about the NFC West being one of the toughest divisions in football. But if I'm being real, it's got to be the NFC North, which is the toughest, which is why 2 of those teams are in my top 4. And the first one is the Green Bay Packers at number 4. And I got them there because they got a team that's better than them, ahead of them, but they also have those high expectations. And at 6-2, they are right there. And Jordan Love, he has been a godsend for that franchise. They've been really blessed as it relates to quarterbacks over the last 30 years.
Yes.
It's absolutely crazy. They've done a fantastic job with drafting people. And Jordan Love now leading the franchise. Josh Jacobs in the backfield, rushing for over 100-plus yards this past Sunday. Couple touchdowns. Certainly didn't hurt, but I feel like they got the pieces complementarily. And it seems like all my positive affirmation seems to be about what offenses are doing. And in the NFL, you need an offense that can put the ball in the end zone, and they can do that. And
they're one of the best defenses at forcing turnovers as well. Like what Jeff Hafley's done, they added Robert Saleh to the coaching staff after he was fired by the Jets to be in a fluid position, which is a genius way of, you don't have a title, the Jets are paying you, but come help us win a Super Bowl. You had that experience. You had that IQ in Saleh. I really like this Packers team too. 3 spots for
shout
me.
out to Jeff Hafley. That's
man. Boston College coach. He's a great
here,
Shout out to Jeff Hafley. He's from New Jersey. Yes, finally worked in a good Jersey reference. That is my dude. He's a great guy. 3 spot for me, I put the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're 6-2. This defense is great, and we've seen that they had an elite defense, and they had an offense that was finding ways to win. And you added Russell Wilson. 99.9% of people were wrong on Russ, including me. That 0.1% is Mike Tomlin, Russell Wilson, and like Russell Wilson's mom. That's it. The only people thought he'd be good. But he's been phenomenal for them. They've had back-to-back games of their offense having 400-plus yards, which didn't happen at all this season before. Go back into last season, it wasn't happening often as well. And he had 3 explosive completions. Like, it was a rough start against a Giants defense that has a really good pass rush and at times can be well in their secondary. And then when he just started letting it go and letting it loose and just like Russ being Russ, where his deep ball is looking crisp, man, he looks good. He's defying expectations. And with how good TJ Watt and Nick Herbig have been on that pass rush, I really like the spot Russell Wilson's in. I love where the Steelers are at. I have them in my 3 spot.
You know what? I love the Steelers enough to keep them out of my top 10 because this is where we differ. They're not even in my top 10 at all, so I'll just give it away. Spoiler alert. I don't even have the Steelers in my top 10, so with the argument that you just made, I feel like I can put them at 10A right behind my 49ers. But my number 3 team is the Buffalo Bills because, as you mentioned, going into Seattle, winning in that place where they have the 12th man that really is able to shift games and kind of be that other voice, that other person that dominates is great. So I think Buffalo with Josh Allen, who arguably is, one of the top 2, maybe he's 1A behind Patrick Mahomes historically, but he probably is one of the top, if not the top quarterback in the NFL right now. So what he's doing after losing Stephon Diggs, losing some of his other receivers that he had in years past.
Yeah.
I think what he's got going on right now is just exceptional. So that's why the Bills are my number 3 team.
Hey, I got him at 4. You got him at 3. Can't hate on that. The top 2 is really tough because the Lions are so damn good, but they're number 2. Look, their last 3 wins, 52-14, 31-29 over the Vikings, who are the best defense in football, and they dropped 31 on them. Then 47-9 to the Cowboys, which the Cowboys stink, but like you put up 47 on someone, respect. The Lions are so damn good. They're so explosive. They're so buttoned up. They have one of the best offensive lines, or the best offensive line in the NFL, you can argue. One of the best receiving rooms, the best running back room, in my opinion. And Jared Goff is just a man-possessed and so locked in playing in that Ben Johnson offense. They lose Aiden Hutchinson, which is a huge loss because he was getting to the quarterback better than anyone in the NFL. But when you have an offense like this and teams can't keep up, you're going to do this to so many teams. Lions, I have them at my 2 spot, which gives it away. I do have the Chiefs at my 1, but I'm interested to hear your 1 and 2 right now in your power rankings.
Yeah, yeah. I figured you would go that way, and it's hard not to because the Chiefs are 7-0, the only undefeated team in the National Football League.
Yep.
They got Patrick Mahomes. They're going for a three-peat, so they
Yep.
got all this pressure every week, week in and week out. Week out, everybody's throwing their absolute best at this team, haymakers. But you know what? Patrick Mahomes has been pedestrian, man. I don't think I've ever seen a year of a quarterback coming off not even one Super Bowl, but two Super Bowls who has been just okay. He's been average, middle of the pack, and that to me is concerning. I feel like if they're going to go forward, he's going to have to turn into the Superman that he's been to get them to this point, and the team that he's been able to carry the two Super Bowl victories at some point during the season. But given what he's done through 7 games so far, I'm not sure if it's in there. Maybe this is his off year. Who knows? I haven't seen it quite yet. I've seen him make plays when he needed to, but I haven't seen him over the course of 60 minutes kind of carry a team to victory. He's had a lot of help with that. So the Kansas City Chiefs are my number 2 team at 7-0, which may surprise a lot of people. But I don't know. Maybe I'm a hater because obviously they beat the 49ers twice. But I'm not feeling it yet. Not quite yet. I feel like there's another team that's better out there, and I'll get to that in a sec.
It's the expectations, and that's why. Like, they have unrealistic expectations. Patrick Mahomes is Steph Curry. When Steph Curry misses a 3, you go, why did he miss that? And when Mahomes looks off, you're like, why is he not playing well? Look, they got the tackle positions wrong. Like, they won a Super Bowl with Donovan Smith. He's sitting on a couch. They drafted Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU, thinking he can be a left tackle, and he's just not ready for that spot yet. They try to swing around Juwan. It's just, they've miffed on the tackles. He lost Rashee Rice. He lost Hollywood Brown. They added DeAndre Hopkins. They just got Joshua Uche to play with, of course, George Karlaftis and Chris Jones. This defense is so damn good because Steve Spagnuolo is so damn good. And I love, like, a coordinator embracing being a coordinator. Like, he could have gotten a head coaching job this offseason. He didn't want to. He's looking around, man. You know what he is, Jahmai? Like, I always say there's so many things. There's a happiness equation, right? And it's like you get that higher paying job, that higher profile job, or whatever it may be, but you're like, all right, there's more money, but there's more stress, there's more attention, but there's more opportunities. And I'd be running my program, I'm a head coach, and he's probably like sitting back, he's like, I'm going to design a defense that has studs everywhere. I got 15 on quarterback to bail me out anytime we let up a score. I don't have to do all the BS press conferences all the time. It's Andy Reid's team. I'm just in the background, but people still know I'm good. You know what? I'm happy. I'm going to stay. So this is me going on a fanboy of Steve Spagnuolo. I just like what he's built, so I just like Spags in the spot. But Chiefs are one because of the DeAndre Hopkins addition, because Mahomes is still doing good with no tackles, and that defense is so elite. So your one spot, if I had to guess, would be Detroit. Am I wrong?
Look at you, man. We might as well call you a psychic, brother, because you got it.
That's
the Detroit Lions. That's true. Detroit Lions are the number 1 team. But it's because of what they were able to do last year. And maybe my litmus test is how tough you play the 49ers, because a lot of the teams that have been able to, come up in my top 10 power rankings are because of kind of how they've measured up against the reigning NFC champions. So I think the Detroit Lions are my top team because you talked about expectations. They certainly have them now 6-1 in their division, tops in the NFC North. Jared Goff is a man who he was one of those classic change of scenery guys. The Rams kind of fell out a little bit about him and what they thought he can provide them to. So he's a man with a chip on his shoulder. Amon-Ra St. Brown, arguably the top receiver at his position. Plus, they lost Aiden Hutchinson, granted. That's a major blow. But the NFL trade deadline is ironically on the same day as Election Day across the United States. I don't think that's a coincidence. So they can make their pick. They can grab some defensive help, and they can get, back where they need to be. So I feel like being 6-1 and having the team that they do and still having an opportunity to improve that team. Yeah. And we saw a press conference the other day from Dan Campbell where he was asked about, have you had conversations with the front office about some of the trades that they're making? And he was almost like a giddy schoolgirl about maybe, they've done some things, and he was jumping up and down. So I feel good about where Detroit is going, considering this team has, they lost the first game of the year. Yeah. And they've won 5 straight now. So it's crazy. Yeah.
It's like leading up to Christmas when accidentally you find the presents your parents got you, and there's that brand new bike, right? Like, yeah, have you talked to front office? Yep, I have.
Exactly.
November 9th. I'll wait. Oh, you're happy to wait on those days. Look, the Lions are tremendous, man. It's hard for me to find any fault in them because of how good they are. And it is, again, what I say, like expectations we have on Mahomes, it's because of 15. And if there was a 1 in the loss column for the Chiefs, I'd have my Lions at 1.